Good evening. This is Gloria Taylor Brown, and this is a gathering of priestesses. And tonight we are blessed with the beautiful Judith Laxer from Seattle, Washington. Reverend Judith Laxer is the founder of the Gaia's Temple. She is a singer. She is a drummer. She's an actor. I don't know, she may keep pigs in her backyard. She is so multi-talented that I have no idea. She was just telling me that she now has a dark moon circle that she keeps on a regular basis and has women coming to that. I've known Judith for a number of years. We worked together at the Women of Wisdom Foundation in Seattle and the Women of Wisdom Conference, and she's still involved, and I'm not. So I want to thank you all for being here, both Judith and Raven. Of course, my co-partner here, Raven, who's in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and she's in lovely green tonight in order to let us know that it is fall there. And we have people coming in from Phoenix and where else? We've got some people coming in from Indiana and a number of other places. You know, we've had people from as far away as Peru and Southwest Australia. We always invite anyone who listens in to tell your friends about this and to share the link. So, Judith, the protocol here is we have one question. And that one question is, how did you come to be on the path of the priestess?
Well, that is a loaded question, so that's a good one to begin with. But I want to start just by thanking you so much for inviting me to be on your webinar, Gloria and Raven. I'm very grateful to you. So to answer that question, you know, I've been thinking about that because it's such a circuitous path, isn't it? But I think what it comes down for me is that I believe that I am continuing work from a past life. I think I came back to do this work. I clearly, strongly feel that I was born to do priestess work. And I've done, you know, a fair amount of past life regressions, and in many of those lives, I've been in the clergy in some way. So not always priestess path necessarily, but I feel like I've been a monk and a sister and a nun and a priest and a this and a that and the other. And I believe that I came back this time at this time because of the freedom and because that I can create a spiritual life autonomously and not have to jump through anybody else's hoops. I'm a rather independent sort, and just create the kind of life that I want. And I also believe because the goddess is rising again and coming to her full glorious power, that I chose to come back at this time to be an advocate for her. So it feels to me, it feels very ancient to me, and it feels very deep in my soul. And then, but how that kind of happened in my actual life here, if that's part of answering this question, was, you know, early on I was in show business. I was in musical theaters, and I did a lot of performance back from New York and all that good stuff. And you know, at the time when I was younger, my goal, you know, was to win the Tony Award on Broadway, right? Because that's that was like the pinnacle of what I could reach. And that didn't happen. And I ended up coming out west, and I left New York, and I left the whole scene back there, including, you know, the beautiful things about it, but also a lot of what was dysfunctional for me. And I felt like I came out here because I was following a calling. And that's such a corny expression, but it really is true. I really felt called to the West Coast. I felt called to Seattle specifically, and I felt called to do this work. And so, you know, I'd always kind of done the psychic thing along the way. I don't remember the first time I actually got a deck of tarot cards, but I know I had them by the time I was 15, and I always dabbled with that. You know, I was reading cards for people backstage in between shows and all that sort of stuff. So it was always kind of the spiritual world and the spiritual life was always walking beside me. And then when I was 29, actually I think it was 30 or 31, somewhere during my Saturn return, I decided that that old life really just wasn't the one for me. And it was a real crisis. It was a crisis in identity. And I came back from, I was already living in Seattle, and I had done a show, the musical Evita, over in Europe. It was a European tour. And I was there for 20 weeks, and I came back, and I'm sitting in my, and I knew it was my swan song. I knew it was the last kind of professional show like that I would do. And I'm sitting in my kitchen, at my kitchen table, and I'm just a mess because I'd never trained to do anything else. This is all I'd ever done. Any other jobs I'd done had been just ways to earn my keep in between shows, you know. So I decided to give myself a reading to see what the future held in store. And so I'm sitting at my kitchen table, and I am crying, I am sobbing. What am I supposed to do with my life now, you know? And I looked down at my hands, and the tarot were in my hands. And I was like, ah. So I thought, oh my goodness, can I earn my living reading tarot? And I turned over a card, and it was the High Priestess. And I swear to you, she winked at me. And, that was kind of like, it was a real turning point. And so, you know, it was through those deeper mysteries that it actually kind of brought me, the spirit, into my spirituality. You know, my birth religion, organized religions just never did a thing for me. It was through the psychic world, through the tarot, all the mysticism and all those mysteries that kind of brought me to understand who I was as a spiritual being. In the 80s, I read Spiral Dance, like all of us did, and was like, oh, that's it. There I am. I know where to, you know, now I know what I resonate with. And then shortly after leaving showbiz, I led my first workshop in goddess spirituality, and that was back in 1993. And I've just been doing it ever since. And so it seemed a very, it did happen out of a crisis because of this huge shift from who I was to who I was becoming. But what is interesting is that I look back now, you know, and all of that training and in singing and dancing and speaking in front of people and acting and all that stuff. Although I will say, Gloria, I do keep a garden, but there are no pigs in it. I don't have pigs. You know, all of that training really was for the work that I do now as a minister and a priestess. You know, I'm not afraid to be in front of people. I'm not afraid to sing. Ritual is theater, and I love to create ritual, and I lead ritual. And so, you know, I look back now and I think the goddess had a plan for me. I just didn't know what it was. And I think had I learned early on, oh, you were meant to be a priestess, I would have been like, what? What, you know, what does that mean? But the idea that I might win a Tony, yeah, well, that'll get me motivated, you know. So that's kind of how it happened. Yeah, that's
actually, I had the idea in the middle of the night the other night that we should have awards. So maybe we can arrange, not for the Tony, but I haven't sure what they're. But I was giving awards to people because one of the things I do want to do is I want to do a certificate program where you get certificates as a priestess that they can put on their wall. And you know, that's it's been part of the program from the beginning. I've intended to do that. Haven't quite got around to it. So those of you out there who are waiting, keep waiting. I will get it to you. But yeah. So you know, as we go along, and you know, for one thing, I know that Judith, at one point, you were involved very heavily with drumming. Now, are you still involved with the drumming?
You know, I just drum kind of ritually and in ceremony now. I was in Simone La Drummer's band, Ladies Don't Drum. That was back in the 90s. We actually disbanded in 1997, and that was a blast. We had a great time, but that was a long time ago, you know. And so now I drum. I still drum, but mostly in ceremony, not, you know, in a performance sort of a way. But again, that was another skill, you know, that I just kind of picked up along the way that is serving my spiritual work. You know, I can sing and drum in ceremony. I can keep a heartbeat going during a meditation. I know lots of different rhythms, and music is such a huge part of I think it's a huge part of my spiritual practice, and it's a huge part of what I offer for other people as well. Particularly in Gaia's temple. So I'd like to talk about the temple a little bit if I can.
Oh, definitely. Tell us a little bit about your temple.
Yeah, so I founded Gaia's Temple in September of 2000, and I had just moved into my little office space in Green Lake. It was the first time I had an office myself. Prior to that, I had been sharing with another woman, another psychic. And so I moved into this place in May of 2000, and I decided that I was going to throw a big office warming party for myself that September. I wanted to have the summer to kind of settle into the place. And as September drew near, and I knew when I was going to have my party, I thought, that was on Friday night. That next Sunday morning, I'm just going to offer a goddess worship service. Just a fluke. Why not? What the heck? And that happened 14 years ago. And there were 12 people who came to that service. And they encouraged me to do it again next month because they loved it. And I think there was some wisdom in there that pagans don't want to gather more than once a month. So I did try to do it more often than that. And I have been offering goddess worship services ever since for like 14 years. So that first service was right around the equinox. So I told a modern day version of the Demeter Persephone story, and I've just gone on ever since then. In 2005, we realized, well, I think it was about a year and a half or 2 years into it, there were 35 people in my little office space. We were packed in, sitting on the ground. I was like, okay, I think this is viable and we need a bigger space. So we moved to another space that we were into for 6 months. And then that kind of got sold out from underneath us. So we moved again to a community center, and we were there for 9 years. And just this year we moved to another community center. I would love some working toward that. But let's see, in 2004, we applied for our nonprofit status and received it, formed a board of directors, created our mission, vision statements, our value statements, the bylaws, just all the foundational work. And this ministry has been happening ever since. So I started it because, there are so many people, and granted, I didn't know that I was founding a ministry at the time. And, this is interesting, too, because I'm a very self-directed person. I decide I want to do this, and I go ahead and do this. I want to learn that, and I learn it, and I master it, and I go off. This was a fluke. This was this thing like, what the heck? Might as well try it. And it's the thing that has absolutely changed my life and become like my life's work. It's really, really something. So anyway, I just went off track there, but
keep going.
So let's see about the temple. So oh yes, and I started it because so many people who follow earth-based spirituality, whether they're solitary or whether they're not, usually either have, well, if they're solitary, then they're working by themselves. But if they're not solitary, they usually already have a circle or a grove or a coven that they're working in. But there are a lot of people that I was meeting in my private practice that were looking for some sort of place to understand about paganism, to learn about the goddess, to understand and learn practices of earth-based spirituality, but didn't have any place to go for that. And so I wanted this to be just open to the public for anybody who wanted to come and learn about the goddess. And here I am 14 years later, and we've got a strong, beautiful, loving congregation, men, women, children. We've had a youth program, although that's kind of on hiatus right now. All the kids that were coming have sort of grown and moved on. When we get more kids coming, we'll probably start it again. And every moon, on the second Sunday, I offer a goddess worship service, and it follows the points on the wheel of the year. I use nature, of course, as the context, but I also weave in stories and qualities that we're striving for, especially as things go crazy and haywire on this planet, how can we, be an advocate for her? How can we be good to each other? How can we develop our own resilience that's so important in these times? How can we stay emotionally present? So these are the teachings that I offer within the context of nature and nature's cycles and the wheel. And the other thing is that, because of my history in musical theater, music is just crucial. It's just so important to me, and it's important in any ceremony anyway. And so I have just an amazing group of talented people that I'm friends with and have cultivated over the years who sing. My friend Pamela Gerke is just an amazing choir director, and she's brought fantastic music to the services. And so we sing all kinds of music and chants, and right now we've got a choir. Gaia's Temple has a choir. It's called the Earth Tones. Isn't it cute? The Earth Tones Choir. And, we just decide, I decide what songs should be selected and sung that's in alignment with the teaching, and the music just creates just beauty, just absolute beauty and magnificence. So that's a huge part of my priestess work, is offering these services. And it's not like when you go to a circle or a ritual. There are ritual components to it. We always create sacred space. There's always a meditation. I lead people through guided meditations based on the theme. We sing in the directions. There's ritual components of it. But it is, an offering, food for thought.
Yeah, well, let's go back, because we do have a number of people who are at the early stages of forming a temple or a ritual or a place where people can come. And so let's go over a few of the things that you found in those early years that you had to deal with, or you found were helpful to you, or were opportunities where, you said, well, this one isn't working. For example, you said that, we moved to this place for 6 months and then it was sold out from under us. That
right.
was a bit of a shock whenever that happened. How do you work with your congregation and move them along? And as you said, as the children come through and as the young ones come in, we have a number of people who are part of this group, or who I would say are in the young ones group. They're in the 28-year-old to 40-year-old group, and they're just beginning to look at how they are going to be a priestess. So some of them are a long way from anybody else. I had the woman that comes in from Southwest Australia, or now watches on YouTube. She lives 20 miles from anybody. She says, I've got a neighbor that's 20 miles away and I don't like him. So, so for her, creating a community requires her literally to drive almost 100 miles.
Wow.
So she's, looking at how she can have community without having to go that far, or how she can have community through the internet. On a regular basis. And we have other people, as I said, we have a group in Indiana that listen to us that are basically the younger ones. They're the mid-40s. And they're coming into their power as priestesses, and they're looking at how it's shaping their lives now, because in many ways it is shaping their lives, and it's changing their lives. So I'd like you to go back and remember back, 2002, 2003, some of the issues that you were dealing with and how you handled them. Because, it is a group process, but it's also a process where you are sort of the high priestess.
Yes. Yes, that is true. The first thing that I want to address, though, Gloria, as you said, there was, that woman who's in Southeast Australia who's, rather isolated and is looking for community online. And we podcast. It's an audio only. It's not live streaming or a video podcast. But on the Gaia's Temple website, which is gaiastemple.org, we have podcasts of the services, and they're usually posted, the Sunday afternoon after their after the service, so people can tune in and they can listen. So just toss that out as something that people were feeling a little isolated. You know, the first couple of years, it was me, myself, and I, because until we actually formed the nonprofit organization, I was just writing the services and offering them up in my office. And, you know, I was actually using CDs as the music, so it really was kind of a solo gig. The challenges, but also the greatest blessings, of course, happened when it kind of shifted into a group process, and I had a board of directors and all that sort of stuff. I think the biggest challenge for me, even though it was challenging when the place got sold out from underneath us and we had to find another place, and you know, that's just kind of the nuts and bolts of it. What the greatest challenge for me is, you know, how shall I say this nicely? I'm a control enthusiast, you see.
She's a control freak. I worked with a woman.
Yeah, and you know, I've got a very strong will, and I've got a very strong sense about what works and what doesn't. And you know, this was my baby, so I, you know, had the say-so over how things happened. And then you work with a group of people who have a vision about this and who share your vision. Certainly, I mean, the people that I invited onto the board at that the first board were those who were, you know, coming to the services. They were dedicated. They shared the vision. They were amazingly supportive, just magnificent, magnificent people. And you know, and the challenges happened around that, because you know, it wasn't just my say-so anymore. It, you know, was a larger group. So then, you know, now you're in group dynamics. You have to learn to be kind to each other. One of the things that we decided on our board is that we were going to operate on circle model, which means that all voices will be heard. We pass the talking stick on all issues. We decided we were going to work on consensus, which meant that, you know, which is easy when everyone agrees, but if they don't agree, then we wouldn't move forward on anything, on any decision, until we either agreed or could live with it. You know, like there were certain things that I wasn't happy with, wasn't necessarily my preference, but I could live with it. And so just to keep things moving forward, you know, we would just move it forward that way. So those were two kind of very important pieces to working with other people, because when it becomes a group process, it's not just yourself. And, you know, I've learned so much about that. I've learned about nonviolent communication. I've learned how important kindness is. I've learned that my enthusiasm is often perceived as dominance, and that I'm trying to dominate something. And I'm just a very enthusiastic person, you know, and I'm very dramatic, and, you know, and then people, you know, feel intimidated by me. And I'm like, really? I'm the nicest person in the world. I wouldn't hurt a fly. I'm a Pisces with a Cancer moon, you know. But that Leo rising has me, you know, kind of big and strong. So I've really had to learn to monitor my own energy, to be very self-reflective, and to develop patience, because, you know, I'm quick, I know what I want, and I'm used to just going after it. And it doesn't work that way with other people. So those, I think, are really important things in working in a group process. And I was very, very fortunate also, because one of the women on the board, that very first board, was going through, she was getting her master's degree in organizational development from Antioch University. And so she was able to use working this, you know, pulling together everything for Gaia's Temple as her like project for school. So it was like a win-win. We had all this. She was a good, strong Capricorn, took us through step after step after step. Sometimes it was excruciating in details. But all of that stuff that we laid down in 2004, here 10 years later, it still is holding strong and true for the organization. So I was very, very lucky that way. But as far as being a priestess and that sort of thing, like what's important in being a priestess, or how do you maintain who you are in a healthy way as a priestess, and I know for me, the most important thing is to remain inspired. That is absolutely the most important thing. Because if I lose inspiration and I lose heart, it just spirals down to nothing. And there goes the whole shooting match. So, nature, of course, is a great inspiration for me. I try to get out in nature as much as possible. I can spend all day, all night out in my garden, so I don't really have to go much further than my own backyard to be inspired in a continued way. But listening to music, reading inspiring words, checking out what other people are doing, forming collaborations, these are the things that are just crucial. Inspiration for priestesses, to me, it's everything. It's everything.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that it's the inspiration, but in many ways it is. It is the breath you draw in that keeps you forward, and the idea of holding yourself in such a space that understand that there are others there with you, that they have opinions and they sometimes disagree with where you were going to go. And
right.
There has to be that space that allows them to speak their truth as well. Because, there's the truth. I mean, Ma'at is the symbol of the truth.
Right.
Right. No, I've got Newt behind me. But anyway, but we have, but we also have our personal truth. And our personal truth can sometimes be very different from somebody else's. I think it's important for us to look at that. And sometimes we just have to agree to disagree.
Yes.
And you know what? I don't think that's the way I want to do this.
Yeah.
And if that's what we're going to do, I have to look at whether I can be part of this or not.
Right.
So I know that it takes a strong creator or creatrix to create these type of temples. Down here in down in Southern California, we have the Goddess Temple of Orange County, and Ava is incredibly open and honest, but she's incredibly directive as to what her temple is going to be like, even though she's got a board and everything else. And so, even in being on the board of churches, I've been on 5 churches boards now, 3 unities and 2 centers for spiritual living. And it's important to hear what other people have to say, even when you don't agree with them.
Right, exactly. It really is. Yeah. Especially if, as a priestess of the goddess and working toward a more feminine model to bring balance into this world, we can't just repeat the same old, bulldoze over people to get what we want, patriarchal way of happening. It's just, it doesn't work that way. And I've lost a few good people because of that, until I got it. Like, oh, right, you're not the only one in the room. But, it's a tricky little balance, too, because, we say that all voices need to be heard and that all voices hold equal weight and everyone's opinion matters just as much as anyone else's. And the founder's voice is a strong one. And it's really, it would be foolish to say that it didn't have more influence, because it's my baby and it's my vision. And there were times when things were going off in a direction like, no, that is not the temple that I founded, and I'm not interested in playing that way or participating that way. So, it is kind of, it's strong, but you can be strong without being cruel or without being thoughtless, and you can be strong and kind at the same time, and that is an interesting and an ongoing endeavor. I think it takes a lot of maturity. I'll tell you, this thing has really grown me up, and I like that. I feel good as a grown-up. I like being grown up.
Well, I have to keep showing you one of these whenever I decide to grow up.
So I wanted to say something to Judith, okay? So, Gloria told me, you didn't tell me this, Gloria told me this, that during Women of Wisdom, when people were having a meltdown, You use something from your showbiz days, which is you look fabulous, you're doing a great job, and everyone loves you.
Everybody loves you.
I want you to know that I have carried that with me all these years. And every once in a while, people I work with are having a meltdown. I say that to them, and they stop, and they go, oh, my God, thank you.
Help.
I always bless you for that.
Aww.
Such a beautiful thing. So I always see you as this wonderfully generous person who is able to do things like that for people. And yeah, you know, we know you're a real pistol. But it sounds to me like what you've learned are amazing boundaries.
Yeah.
And the boundaries are, I work for a church, and I worked for a priest who had been there for over 30 years. And when I first started working there, I didn't understand how to deal with all the parishioners. And I said, what do I do with these people? They come in and they're, oh my God, you know, they have these problems. They want to talk to me all day. They want me to do these things. And he just looked at me and he said, Raven, have lots of compassion and very good boundaries.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it sounds like over the years, what you learned were compassionate boundaries, which I think encompasses everyone else to be in circle together.
Yes, I think so too. And it models how that's done. You know, that thing about you look great, everybody loves you, and you do it. I don't even remember what that was now. But anyway, that came out of a meeting where some new people were was training at Women of Wisdom about how do you best handle when you're the point person for the presenter. Like, what does the presenter need from you, and this is what you have to do. You know, you register people and this and that and the other, but what's the most important thing? And it just came right out of my mouth. You just make sure you tell them you look great, everybody loves you, and you're doing a great job.
Yeah. And one woman, I went into her office months later, and I had written it down in a card for her, and she had that card up on her bulletin board, and it is still there.
I love that. I love that. It just goes in the flow. It leads back to what you were saying earlier, Gloria, about the certificates. You know, it's an acknowledgement. And I think that's what we need to be acknowledged for the work that we're doing. Everybody needs to be acknowledged for whatever the work is that we're doing. And I think when we're living in a scarcity mindset that has us believing that if I acknowledge you, then there's not enough for me. Like, there's a limited amount. You know, it's just insane. And you're right, Raven, there's a generosity to it. And I think that's crucial, just so crucial. You know, I just noticed on the side of the screen there's like chat, and I'm seeing all these kind of people that I know. It's just lovely. Seeing that people have come onto the program. So.
Meredith says that she loves hearing your story, and that everyone should read your book. So now's the time for you to raise your book up. You got your book there with you?
I do. Here's my book. It's called Along the Wheel of Time: Sacred Stories for Nature Lovers. And thank you, Meredith. Meredith and I were in show business together way back when, so she's been a dear friend for years and years and years. So yeah, it's kind of surreal that this book finally got published, and I know you know what that's like when it finally happens. It took me 55 years. Here I am at 55, but it finally happened. And so this is a short story collection, and there are short fictional stories that accompany the points on the Wheel of the Year. And so they are different stories depicting people living their magical lives. And I'm rather proud of this little thing, actually. I'm really happy about it. I didn't want to write another how-to book about the craft, or about paganism, or about, you know, earth-based spirituality. I'm grateful for the how-to books that are out there. I know they certainly helped me when I was going on my path years ago. But there are so many out there, and I just didn't want to do that again. And I knew I had a book in me, but I didn't really know what it was. And then one day, I think I was at a bookstore, and I was looking at the shelves of who's on the pagan shelves, and I just realized there were no stories. And in Gaia's Temple, I'm always telling stories. Like, that's it. I just need to write a storybook about how people live magically. And so I finally wrote it. And it only actually took me 1.5 years to write the stories, but it took 7 until it got published. And that's, writing the book is one thing. Getting it published is a whole nother job.
No.
And oh boy, yeah.
So is it available on Amazon, or is it available through your website?
It is available on Amazon, and also so you can get it on your Kindle as well, or you can order a hard copy. And you can also get it on Barnes & Noble online if you have a Nook. So, yeah, and you can follow the link either through the Gaia's Temple website or my personal website, which is judithlaxer.com. And you can go to the writing menu there, and you can click on it, and you can get the book, yeah. And it's been wonderful, too, just that some of the feedback that I'm getting from people, it's just been so heartwarming to me and so satisfying. And the other thing is that, you do a book and it's like your calling card. And so a lot of the work that I've been trying to get out there for the longest time is now starting to happen. So I'm just so excited about that,
I was just thinking as I was listening to you, do you know Reverend Ione?
I don't.
And she's in the Hudson Valley up in New York, and she has the Ministry of Ma'at. A lovely, incredible woman who is a poet and an author and a speaker and writes plays and operas. And I definitely think you two should be connected.
Yeah.
So, been on our show a couple of times. And in fact, her upcoming Women of the Duat, which is coming up in November, is on the back page of the Priestess magazine. She has a wonderful play which is currently created, I guess you would call it. It's called Io and Him and the Trouble with Her. So she's lovely, incredible, and she has a number of followers on. She just came back from Prague and Paris. So a good person for you to know. I'll send you a connection. I'll send an what do you call it? Introduction to both of you.
Great.
And in fact, she may be on here tonight. I haven't looked, but she's free to be on.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, so she's someone that I definitely think that you should connect with. And I know you still have some connections back in the New York area. I don't know if you have as many as you did, but...
No, it's mostly family now, though. It's mostly... My family is still back there. So I get back to New York about once a year to see them, and yeah. But a lot of the show business stuff... I still have a few friends from the old days that I hook up with when I go back there, but... I'm so out of that loop now. It seems like an old dream, and I'm so glad I did it, and I'm so glad I'm not doing it anymore. I just feel so like I'm in right livelihood now, in my life, doing the work that I'm doing. So yeah, but it sounds lovely to meet her. I'd love to meet her. Yes, thank you.
Yes. Definitely. And we have one of the things that's happened, and I don't know whether or not you know this, but this is the 28th show of this program.
Yes.
We've had, in the first 17 shows, we had 2 people on each show. So we've had a number of people on to be interviewed. We've created as much as possible as you can with these far-flung people, a community and an opportunity. And for those of you who are listening to us, I really want to invite you to join the Gathering of Priestesses, which is a group on Facebook. It is a closed group. You have to ask to join, and I have to approve you. And the reason for that is because, frankly, there are people I don't want there. And I'm a little bit of a control freak. So,
enthusiast, or control enthusiast.
Yes, right. Well, I'm not willing to have people there who are going to be into negativity. I don't want anybody there who's going to, and I don't particularly want men there. I'm willing to have some if they seem to be really, 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 really in line with the goddess, but the majority of them, no. So, you know, I like men, but sometimes there needs to be a place where they aren't. And we also have the membership site, which those of you who've paid to be part of that is it has all the videos. It has all the gifts that came from the priestesses during the telesummit, and those are all downloadable for you. So and that includes Raven's. Let's see, what did you give? You had a water journey.
Yes, I did the journey of the ancient water spirits out of my book.
Right.
I recorded that and took them out to hang out with the ancient water spirits who they find deep in a cave, and the spirits come and give you gifts.
Yeah, so I always like people who come and give me gifts.
Me too.
You know, show up now. Anyway, so Raven, did you have more questions for Judith?
Oh, I was just having so much fun listening to you, Judith.
Thank you.
You know, I guess my question that might be helpful to other people is, you know, you said you have to keep inspired, and you talked about ways you keep inspired, but not all of us do that. Mm-hmm. Some of us do lose it and lose our energy, and it does fall apart, and we have to scramble and bring it back. So, I mean, you say you can be in your garden, you can be out in nature, and yes, I love beauty and plants, and you know I do too. But I can lose my inspiration, and it's not a good place to have lost that. So how could you tell us and me and others who might go in and out of that, how would you empower us to stay inspired?
Well, I think, and I'm glad you brought this up actually, Raven, because Gloria, you mentioned earlier about, you know, what would I tell the younger women who are coming up, who are just beginning, you know, to either create their temples or to do their work. And this is what I would say to them and to all of us about this aspect of being inspired. You know, the word inspiration is a very lofty word, and so I think we think it means we have to do something that's big and a lot, and if we're already feeling depleted or exhausted, it's like, oh, sure, now I got to do something to get inspired? Forget it. I don't even have enough energy to wash my coffee cup, you know. But I think if we remember that inspiration really is something that can be very, very simple. It can be watching the right movie, you know. But even more than that, I think it's remaining in intimate relationship with deity. And that's different for everybody, but I know for me, you know, I mean, the work that I put out there in the world is to inspire other people. That's like what I feel I'm here to do, is to try to keep people inspired. That's why I know I need to become inspired. And there's all the administrivia. There's the details and oh my God, the details, sometimes I feel like I'm just going to drown. And it's like, can't I just do the priestess work? Do I really have to follow this database, or, you know, all of that madness? So when I remember, oh, it's the new moon, I should cast a spell. Oh, it's the full moon, I'm going to go draw her down. I'm going to listen to Raven's, you know, meditation, and I'm going to go into the water cave, and I'm going to see what gifts can come to me. You know, stay in relationship with the numinous and the magical. That's why we're on this path to begin with. And we get, you know, the royal we, and I'll just speak for myself, you know, I get so caught up sometimes in taking care of all the details and all the nuts and bolts and all the things that have to get done in order for this to, you know, to fly. And I get it backwards sometimes. It's like, no, I have to fly first, and then all of these other things are going to fall into place. So for me, it's just staying in. What
kind of a trust issue has that been for you, to put that kind of trust in your relationship with the divine to come first?
See, this is why I started out by saying that I feel it's a carry-on from a past life. because trusting in spirit, you know, the birth religion and the other kind of patriarchal Judeo-Christian Islamic religions that I just like, I'm sorry, no can do. I would have no faith there. I couldn't put my faith there. But my faith in the goddess is just like from the moment I realized who she was, it was just like the puzzle piece came together, and it's been like that ever since.
Wonderful.
So it's not even a question of trust for me. It's just how it is. It's just how it is for me. And I think that's because from past life through to this one, it's just been as natural as the day is long. So I don't have a trust issue there. If I start to question or doubt, which is, you know, often, although it's not as often now as it used to be when I was younger. I think as I mature, I don't question myself so much anymore. But when I do, and there are times when I go, why am I doing all this work? You know, I'm not a wealthy woman. It's like, you know, all the reasons why people bust their hump and put in so much energy. I don't really know if I'm seeing all that come back, you know. When I question and doubt that, I just remember that I'm here in service to her. And it's like, oh, yeah, right, that's why. And, you know, maybe today you need a break. Today, don't turn on the computer. Today, take those apples, make some applesauce, can some marinara, you know.
Yeah,
That's what I did today. I made applesauce and marinara today. That's why I said that. Because I needed a break. I'm just fried, you know.
well, I think we're all fried right now. Everybody I talk to, they're just so exhausted, me included. But you know, one of the things we do have as part of the group is we have some incredible female rabbis. So basically the way that we have formed this is it's for women who are in service to the divine, however you define the divine.
Right.
And we want to support women who are basically doing the work of the goddess, doing the work of the god, doing the work of the divine. You know, I started this whole thing for me, and which I've told the story a couple of times, started way back in 1987 when I was in a dream group, whenever I was doing a lot of serious, very deep dream work. And I woke up one night and I said, my role here on earth is to bring the women back to her. And it was like, okay, and how am I supposed to do that?
Yeah.
Because I had no idea. You know, I was involved, at that point, I was involved with real estate. I was mainly working with men in commercial real estate and building buildings. And I had no idea how to do it and no idea how I was going to do it. And it's like, don't worry about it. We'll do it. It's going to happen. It's not going to happen on your time schedule. It's going to happen on a divine time schedule. So for me, this has very much been an unfolding of a dream that began back in 1987. And I think people need to realize that sometimes it takes a while for these things to happen because they're not working on our time schedule.
Right.
I once had a conversation with a divine spirit, and I asked him, you know, I said, well, why can't we get this done faster? And he says, well, why should we? And I said, because I need it done. And he says, but I don't. And he says, you know, you're applying your belief system. And in a way, it's like the thing we were talking about where you have to be in relationship with people who are in your group, and sometimes they don't agree with you. And he said, you know, to me, 1,000 years is but a blink of the eye. Says,
Yeah.
We take as much time as it is necessary to do it, whatever that may be.
And the other thing, too, about that is, you know, as far as trust is, you know, well, it's like anything else. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. The more you trust, the more you realize you can trust. And so for me, that's happened with regard to, you know, how how the services, let's say, about how I create the services. You know, there are times like, oh my God, I can't find a singer. My drummer dropped out. I just, and then I remember, you know what? This is for her. She's going to provide it, and she does. I have yet to get up there without every single thing that I need. But that's happened because I've trusted that that's exactly how that was going to happen. And you're right, it's not always on my timetable. You know, I like to know 6 months. I'm a rehearsal freak. You know, I like to know 6 months ahead of time exactly what's going to happen. I know, I like to prepare, you know. But I'm just learning that some of the most magnificent things that have occurred because I've been out of the way, you know, and just let them kind of come through.
Yeah, I agree. And so for you going forward, what are the things that you most want to accomplish? I'm sure you've got your 2015 all planned out.
I've got some of it. Some things are booking in there, yeah, for sure. So I'm excited about that. So you mean just in 2015 or just the big picture?
I just know you 2015 has already got, you know, well, we're going to do this and that and the other, and beyond that you probably have some other plans, but share with us what it is that you're looking at going forward.
There's a few things that I'm looking forward to next year. One is I'm going to be the ceremonial director at the Midwest Herbal Women's Gathering in June. I've just been invited to. Pardon?
We have good friends there.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited about that. And I've just been invited to present at the Priestess Gathering in California through Anik Radiant Heart in September. So there's kind of two things that are plugged in June and September of next year, which I'm very excited about. And I'm looking forward to more, you know, more connections that way in a larger arena. You know, that's the thing that happens when you have a book. You know, I don't think I'm any different than before the book than I am now, or at least my work doesn't seem to be any different. And yet it's kind of the calling card. So it's helping me to reach out with larger communities and go beyond just the Seattle base. But I think I've begun working on my next book. So I'm excited about that, and that's kind of in the works. And, you know, like I said, I would love so much to grow my congregation in Gaia's Temple to the point where we could get our own temple space. I love the people that I'm sharing the space with now at this place that we're at. So it's really good. And I have to keep telling myself that, you know, however it works is fine. It's the same sort of thing, the trust thing. You know, I have the idea it should be like this. But if it should be like that, if I'm supposed to have a temple space, she's going to give it to me, you know. And all my job, I know, is just to remain inspired and try to do as much inspiring as I can. And in that big picture, I sure would love to just have a temple space where we can paint in our colors and put the goddess flags up and plant that garden and have the sanctuary round and, you know, just all the things that I dream of in my fantasy. Maybe it's just a fantasy, but it keeps me motivated.
Raven and I are moving forward to the Goddess Ranch. We're going to create basically a retirement community. So we have a garden and a sustainable living and all of those things, and including a temple. And the most recent drawing I saw was really interesting. The center core of the entire thing was about a 25 by 25 foot room that they call the library. So maybe you can come and do services for whenever we get this started. We're hoping to get it started get it built in the next year or two. So that's one of our goals.
It's a date.
Yeah.
I'll fix tea, Judith.
What?
Sorry?
I'll fix tea.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Raven's in charge of our altars. Raven is the altar mistress of all altar mistresses. You know, one of these days, Raven, we should have you do the calling into the directions as a show and have you take your computer in your altar room and do that and let people see how incredible that space is for you.
Oh, yeah. That's lovely.
that she dedicates in her home as an altar, besides all the rest of the stuff, as you can see the crystals behind her here. So, Judith, as we're wrapping up this evening, we're want to have you to give us your websites again for the podcast.
Sure. So the Gaia's Temple website is www.gaiastemple.org, and that's spelled GAIAS as in Sam, temple.org. And then my personal website is judithlaxer.com, LAXER.com, judithlaxer.com. And you can link to Gaia's Temple through my website too. You know, it's all connected.
So your first book's title is?
My first book's title is Along the Wheel of Time, Sacred Stories for Nature Lovers.
Okay, and if somebody is near Seattle or in the Seattle area, when is your services, and are they welcome to attend?
Everybody's welcome. They are so welcome to attend. Everybody's welcome. Nobody is turned away at the door. And it's always on the second Sunday of the month. So the next one is going to be, I believe it's November 9th. I can check on that, but I just turned to look at the calendar. But it'll be on the calendar on Gaia's Temple. So it's always the second Sunday, and the service starts at 10 a.m., and that is at the George Center for Community, which is on 125th Street in Lake City here in Seattle. And but then the podcast is posted later that afternoon on the Gaia's Temple website, so you can always tune in. And you know, we podcast just the teaching part of it. We don't do the whole thing because it's, you know, that would be too long for a podcast. But you can get the gist of what I'm yapping about up there.
Well, that's fabulous. You know, I used to live 3 blocks from there.
Yeah.
Nice neighborhood, folks. You're totally safe.
And the second Sunday is November 9th. I looked it up.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Because after you get done with the service, you go to the Value Village and get really good clothes.
Exactly.
So I want to thank everybody, including Judith and Raven, for being here this evening. I want to thank our guest, and I want to thank everybody who is here as an audience, Saisha and Bonnie and Barbara, and everyone else who tuned in tonight, and everybody who's going to be tuning in over the next few days and listening to the program. And whether you're listening to it today, tomorrow, or a year from now, what we want you to know is that we love you, and we want you to be part of a gathering of priestesses. Because you see, as we come together, we join in force and in heart, and we have the ability to change the world. Because you see, that's what this is really all about. What we're really doing here is we're making way for peace on earth. And I asked Raven one time a few years ago what was her main goal, and she said peace on earth. I said, I can get behind that. So our goal is to contribute to peace on earth, to contribute to the love, and to contribute to everyone being just in that space of service to the divine, because we believe as we are representing God, Goddess, whatever you want to call them, here on earth. And I always remember, in fact, I think I heard Judith say this the first time, God doesn't care what you call him, what you call her. It was, I think she was one of the ones that was the first that said that to me. And so, you know, we have a number of different ways in which we represent, but it is our hand that do the work here on earth. It is our mouths that say the words here on earth. It is our hearts that are moving forward and changing the earth, changing the world, making it a better place for our children's children's, because there's nobody else who's going to do it. And I want to welcome you and ask that you join with us, whether you join with us on the Facebook groups or whether you join with us in watching the shows, or whether you just join with us in spirit, because you see, we need every one of you to make the difference we've come here to make. You know, this is our mission, and whether it's yours I ask you to come and join with us. And I also ask you to come back next week whenever our lovely Ann Key, who is the editor and publisher of Stepping Into Ourselves, an anthology of writings on priestesses that started this whole thing, will be with us. And if we're really lucky, she'll bring a Shira with her. And you know, we've got to figure out a way to have the snake cam. A Shira is a very large python. And so...
She weighs 35 pounds.
Yeah, like I said, very large.
And dances with her. Formidable.
You know, one thing I would love to do is to figure out how we can have people perform on here, because you know, Judith has one of the most beautiful singing voices I've ever heard, and there are many people who are performers, and I want you to include that. So realize that those are opportunities we want you to have, and we want you to be part of it. This is not about me. It's not about Raven. It's not about Judith. It's about all of us. So thank you for being here this evening, and good night, and I hope you have a lovely week. And
thank you so much, Gloria. Thank you, Raven.
Love you, Judith. So good to see you again.
Love you too. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.